So yeah, welcome to Agent Growth Hub on the build call. A couple of big changes that are going to be coming to these calls in the Agent Growth Hub starting next week. We are going to be consolidating the calls. So we have been kind of separating newer agents and partners into a conversation on Wednesdays, and then bringing in more experienced agents and agents who are really looking to build their big businesses a lot bigger on Thursdays. And what we've found is those conversations have been awesome, like actually really excellent on both sides. But we feel like there's so much value in them that we want to consolidate those two groups of people in order for us to learn more from the young people and remind them of the things that they need to know, and then vice versa, right? There's a lot of really amazing up and comers that are doing some big things that I think is really valuable for all of us. So moving forward, starting next week, we will have the same link for Build through the end of February. Starting in March, REAL has offered to let us be part of REAL Academy. So on Thursdays at 10 a.m., same time, same day, we will be hosting Build in REAL Academy. We will also have an external link. So anybody who's not with REAL can, of course, take part and still stay in our trainings, which is pretty awesome. So we're very excited to make those changes and still be able to connect at a really high level, but not have it feel like a huge commitment for multiple people on the team and different agents and different days. Everybody can come together in their collective genius and connect every Thursday at 10 a.m. So that starts next week. Like I mentioned, we'll keep the same link for the next, I believe, 3 weeks. And then starting in March, we will be promoting a new link that we will go to that everybody will need to re-register for. And then we'll also be streamed in Real Academy. So hopefully we'll be able to pull in some other, people and people that don't have access to this right now that don't. So that being said, we're very excited about those and those changes. But today's topic, I know that Ed and Jim looked like a cute prom couple in their the marketing flyer here for this day, but we really wanted to kind of talk, especially as we're moving into a market this springtime of like changes, and the market's moving very quickly at a very quick clip all of a sudden, right? And multiple offers are coming out in different price points, and like spring has really sprung, at least in the Pacific Northwest, in the market. I think that it's important that we are revisiting what does the value of a buyer consultation bring to a client? How are we setting expectations in this market? And all of the subject matter around that particular subject. Because I would like to hear kind of from you guys what's going on in your guys' markets, how it's different. As we know, things kind of trend back and forth from the east to the west of the country. So we can kind of give each other warnings and and advice, I suppose, on how things are going. So when you guys are talking to clients, how are we setting expectations right now for what the market's doing? Okay, don't everybody talk at once now.
I talked a lot about this yesterday, so I'd love to hear some other people chime in, like Jen.
Was that me or Jim? I can never tell. Because we're in the same market, but yeah.
I think he said Jen.
That was
me?
you.
He said you.
Me,
yeah,
okay.
He said you.
As far as the changing market and how I'm coaching buyers, this is actually very real and fresh because Emerald, my partner, and I were just talking about how we can kind of bring value to our current shopping active and signed clients, as well as new buyers we're meeting. And really what it is framing that the time to discuss what leeway we may have as buyers is kind of gone. We don't have the opportunity to sleep on stuff as much anymore. We also don't have the opportunity to really try and negotiate lower prices as well as closing costs. Like we can maybe get away with some things, but not all things. And it really does depend on where the home is at and what mini market it's in. I've unfortunately maybe not unfortunately, but maybe frustratingly most of my pipe is of a price point that's below the average market price point. And so that is the area of market where these things change first and more quickly. And so now it's more urging them, hey, like we are going to need to be Johnny on the spot. If we see something, we need to see it immediately. And then we can't take 24 to 48 hours to decide if you want to make move on something. We also need to be very strategic in what we ask for and start negotiating for, because the competition is already high. We're seeing when we go to book out showings, we can't pick any old time because there's already stuff booked, like it's actually getting more traction. And so this kind of coaching, I think, is really important so that they actually are met with success and don't miss out. I have one gal who, she's a school teacher in Marysville, which is a town in our market. And she was texting me back pretty frequently, like early in the morning when I sent her a listing, and then it was crickets. And so I was like, okay, she probably just wanted to pass on it. And the next morning I was like, hey, just FYI, that house went under contract. And she's like, oh, I was away from my phone all day and I didn't get a chance to answer. Oh my gosh, dang it. And I was like, well, here's a prime example of why we need to you can at least say, yes, let's try, and then I'll work it out, because I know kind of when you're off work and all these things. So that's kind of where I'm at with my current pipeline.
Welcome to the market. That's what you should have said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, like, unfortunately, a lot of buyers kind of have to go through, like, getting bit in the butt a little bit, getting their teeth kicked in, as we used to call it, before they kind of realize the pace with which they need to run. And it's a fine balance, I think, because as agents, our job is to obviously make sure that we're helping them avoid pitfalls and avoid, too emotional of decisions. But at the same time, if we're trying to accomplish something, we're trying to get them into a home in their price range or close to their price range, in a quick manner, we got to move quick, because it's only going to go more. It's only going to get, higher in value. It's only going to appreciate more over the next couple of months. So, like, telling those stories, I think, is also really important, Jen. Like, telling those in your stories on social media, telling the other clients that you're talking to, like, I would love to go see this with you if you're available today. I just had a client miss out on a house yesterday because she didn't get back to me for 24 hours and missed out. Like, be telling these stories actively to help kind of give perspective to the other clients. But for sure, agreed. And guys, I know that there's a handful of you waiting as attendees and just watching, and that's totally cool, but we will invite you to be promoted to a panelist so that you can take part in the conversation if you'd like to. So, Kim, what about you guys right now? What are the buyer sentiments? How are we setting expectations with buyers for your market?
I feel like we're still in a spot where I start everything by just saying it's weird. There are going to be houses where we have 20 offers in the first 24 hours and we're competing with everybody under the sun. And there's going to be houses that are still sitting there after a month and we can walk in and get them for list price and ask for whatever we want. So it's just weird. And some of it is hard to predict. So I always talk about, like, there's a lot of different strategies we can use, but the first thing we're going to do when you say you love a home is I'm going to call that agent and I'm going to find out how many offers do they have? Are they competitive? Get a feel of what we need to do, so we're not giving away more than we need to, but also not losing something because we're not trying.
For sure. Immediate action, for sure. So how do we feel like the narrative around the value that we bring in a buyer consultation needs to change? Because, like, 3 months ago, the conversation in buyer consultation was very different than it needs to be right now. So what are we shifting in those conversations?
I just had a buyer consultation yesterday where I was very clear on, we're starting our search now where we're already starting to see the pace of the market change and competition with multiple offers change. So in the event we find a home that you really like and it's at the tippity top of your budget, we're going to have to be aware that you may not have a fighting chance. We can, of course, still swing the bat. What we could do, though, is look under your budget, and that way you have some room to either escalate or play or kind of see what you can do to negotiate. That frame has to be shifted a little bit in order for you to be successful. Otherwise, we'll go straight to the top and someone else can go a little higher. That's going to be a prevalent thing. The other thing that I frame is that we need to be very quick and responsive, like I had said a minute ago, and you have to be prepared to meet in the middle with the seller. I actually kind of said, you're going to have to make it so it's okay for them and okay for you, because my job is to represent you, but at the same time, there may be a buyer that gives a better choice to that seller. So we're going to have to meet them in the middle. And I use this a lot when talking about inspection strategies and things like that, because we want to mitigate their risk where you still feel safe with what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of buyers are going to be coming into this conversation not realizing the market has pivoted and changed as fast as it has. So
Yeah,
there's huge education
exactly.
on you there, and they're going to come into it thinking like, "Hey, I'm asking for like closing cost credits, and I've got the leverage." And so there's going to be a serious reality check. Like we did a buyer consultation last week with a girl, and she was using an out-of-state lender that didn't know our market, and he had told her, "Hey, you should be able to get $10,000 or $15,000 back in closing costs." And the home that she offered in on escalated $125,000. So it's like there's a mismatch between what they're hearing and what reality is. And it's
Yeah.
just because one, it's changed very quickly in most markets. And two, we haven't taken the time to educate them yet. So that buyer consultation becomes really important again, to slow it down before you speed up and make sure that they have clear expectations on what it's going to take to win or lose a home. In our buyer's guide, we've got what we call an offer variables page, and there's about 18 different tactics and strategies that we discuss with the buyer. And so we want to make sure we go back through that page again. Like for the last 2 years hasn't been super relevant, but all of a sudden every one of those things matters again.
Well, you also have to remember that buyers they're not only getting their information from you, they are seeking out information from everybody, whether it's right or wrong. And that's a little scary as well.
Mm-hmm.
Google. Dangerous rabbit holes that these guys are going down.
Yeah. And I think we see that, I think you guys probably do in Seattle too, is that people come to us and they're like, "Oh, I read such and such on the national news that there's too much inventory and prices are falling, da, da, da." And I'm like, well, that's great. Like somewhere that is true, not in Massachusetts. Nobody's filled it.
Not here.
So that's not what we're getting into.
There's a very simple dynamic that you can explain to people that will make some sense to them. And that dynamic is very simply that when rates go down, competition and prices go up. It's literally that. And
basic economics.
Yeah. And let's go back and look at rates. And rates peaked in October at 7.9%, and rates are like 6.2% right now. So what do we know is going to happen, right? It's just super basic economics. And that's the most simple way to explain to people.
Yeah. The first Tuesday of every month, our mortgage, like one of our lender partners comes in and does kind of mortgage minute update with our team. And this week when they came in, they said, and it's a good statistic for us to remember. It was a great reminder for us that for every 1% that interest rates go down, what was it? 5 million buyers enter the market nationwide. So let's just think about that for a second. So if interest rates were really high last year, if they're down a full point, we've got multiple more buyers in every single market right now, which is going to increase competition and, of course, increase prices. In our market, we pulled the stats and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but we're down 50% in inventory year over year. 50%. We have half as many houses available for sale in January 2024 as we did in January 2023. So we are running into in my opinion, one of the most unique markets where interest rates are actually pretty reasonable because I think everybody's acclimated to them now, but inventory is crazy low. New construction isn't keeping up with demand, and inflation plus, the affordability, there's like all these crises on all these different fronts, right? And so the other part of that is, okay, the amount of effort that it's taking to not just find the clients, but find the qualified clients right now. Jen, what were the numbers that I pulled up for our team sales meeting on? Do you remember them? Like how much more effort, how many more outreach and contact attempts we had to make to get a similar outcome?
I think in the 2023 number, it was like in the 800s of phone calls placed, and I don't remember the conversations, but I do remember this month, or January of this year's phone calls placed was like almost 1,600. And like,
No, it was 5,000. It was 5,000.
Oh, 5,000. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm thinking of the conversations,
Yeah,
but then the appointments are a little bit different, but the actual like signed and then under contract and closed is very similar. So it's like the amount of actual conversations and discussions and outreach is multiples for the same amount of results. We're kind of neck and neck where we were last year.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there are so many people that we've seen right over the last 6 months that are getting out of the business and that are having to pick up part-time jobs. And it's like, we knew this was coming. We talked about this 18 months ago. We talked about this all last year, that it's going to take more effort to get the same results. And now we're finally seeing it in the data. We're finally able to see like, okay, yeah, it's taking 5 times the amount of effort to get the same amount of appointments and qualified clients and people under contract. That puts in perspective what needs to be done, right, as agents. I had a great conversation with Maria Quatron yesterday out of New York or out of Philadelphia. And we were talking about like as team leaders and as people who are leading other people and trying to, move people into action and also inspire them and keep them motivated, like to understand how it feels, like how much effort it takes, because it feels like a freaking grind right now, right? Like how many people, Jen, like you've got people out of your control that are like, oh, sorry, we've got a leaky roof, so we're going to put our search on hold for 2 years. And Chuck, all these things are happening. And so right now it's a grind, but continuing with these activities, continuing having more and more and more conversations, we have to, as agents, adopt the mindset of whatever it takes. Not like, okay, I hit my 150 dials this week, or, oh, I had 10 conversations this week. Like if we know that it takes 4 to 5 times the amount of output, and we need to up the activity to match what we want our results to be. Just kind of exhausting sometimes. Everybody's like, yes. But saying that to say, how are we articulating the value of an actual buyer consultation? I know Mike said like slow down to speed up, but for people who don't understand, who are reading in Zillow, thinking that the market's slowed, thinking that, values are plummeting, thinking that they can get 15,000 closing costs, like how are you articulating that this buyer consultation is actually really important right now?
I think it's really good to ask some questions that help the person understand perspective to this journey they're about to go on, right? And so I might ask Ed and just say like, hey, Ed, it's really exciting that you're thinking about buying a house in the future. Would you say that this is going to be like one of the larger financial decisions you've made in your life? And he's going to say, well, yeah, because it's like $600,000 or $700,000. And then that's when you kind of get into discussing the value of planning and preparation. You say something like, Ed, with such a big decision, your planning and preparation really does matter. And before you embark on that journey, even if you're 3 or 6 months out from when you're going to start the home search, we really want to sit down with you and invest time up front to make sure you have a game plan put together on exactly how you're going to buy a home, and so you don't have any surprises pop up along the way.
And I think storytelling in this is a big deal as well. So Mike would probably also tell me something like, I had a client just last week or last month, and this was the journey they took, and this is what happened because we didn't do this, this, or this. I think stories really help people along as well.
Anybody else on the BC? Getting them into it at least?
I tend to, like, for example, Zillow, when you go out and you meet with them at a house, I like to get to know them a little bit, and it's really low pressure at that point because usually they're pretty excited to tour a home. Usually when I'm setting the appointment to actually go do the go and show, I'll find out if they've been touring already or if this is their first one. And usually it's their first or second, maybe. So there's a lot of really like excitement and fun chit chat and kind of learning about who they are and everything in the beginning of the tour. And then I start to ask, well, how long have you been hoping to move and what are your next steps? And they're usually, and I think this is, a fairly common thing. They're usually like, well, we just figured we'd start kind of looking online and tour ones we thought looked good. And then I'll usually say, okay, well, in the event this home was the one you wanted to offer on, there's a few things that would need to be in place before we could go out and try and win it for you. In the meantime, there's a couple showings booked after us too, so they might be ready if we aren't. And so normally what we do on our team to really make sure our people are ready to go is we sit down and we chat things through so you have absolutely no surprises. You know exactly how we're going to offer, and we have that game plan in place. And so it's really just kind of like putting it in perspective while we're literally in the home. And I'm usually pretty successful at getting those Zillow go and show clients to come back and sit down with me. Whether or not they actually are fully motivated to put in the work at this moment, that's another question. But getting the value of sitting down for a buyer's consult when I'm in face-to-face, I think that's actually more successful for me than on the phone. And I'm not bad on the phone.
And I see you unmuted. Did you have a participation contribution here?
So I was just one thing. It was kind of going back to the conversation about the market that Kim was talking about. How our market is really weird, and that value to the consultation is, you know, we've just given examples. Like we've had sellers come in, buyers come in and offer $40,000 or $50,000 over list price with no other offers on sellers we represented, and we've had. You know, and we've had buyers that offer $25,000 less and say that is the house on how sellers we represent houses, and the property went for $25,000 or $30,000 more. So to be able to have somebody that can help you navigate how to offer if you actually want the house and not overpay for it is why you want to meet with us.
Yes.
So I think in our market, just because that stuff that I just mentioned happens all the time.
Agreed. Yeah. So what about in the buyer consultation? So we've got them there. We explain the value. We bring them in. Michael has the variables sheet, but in regards, like, how can we create urgency? Because I think that's like the biggest thing that we're going to need to really do right now is creating urgency while also maintaining the respect for their decision and their respect for their thought process through making that huge decision, right? There's a lot of really high C clients, especially in our market. We have a significant amount of like tech and engineers and, you know, people in our market who are like very, very high Cs. They need so much information up front. And so being able, number one, to get them in the buyer consultation, that's one thing, right? Like, okay, let's get them there. But then how are we explaining to them the amount of urgency other than showing them and like to Jen's point, having their client actually physically experience missing out on a house? How can we translate that into like this is the pace with which we need to move? And are you good with that?
I think one thing is to determine the motivation that they have to find a home now. And if they're not too clear on why, you know, it's okay, I can wait, you know, if it's too busy right now and we don't find something, or, you know, I don't have time to think it through, I'll just wait until summer or whatever. And that's where in the conversation of the price changing and how it's going to cost you quite a bit to wait will come into play. You can utilize, you know, appreciation year over year in that kind of averages per month. This might be what you're paying for this exact same home in 4 months. And then with that conversation, you can say, in the event that we are in a situation, and I actually bring up like the offer review dates. That's one of the things I like to coach clients on in the buyer's consultation. And I will usually touch on it all year long in a buyer's consultation. When it's not spring market, I'll usually say, we probably won't see this. I just want to explain what it is. And then when it becomes this time of year, that's when I say, we will see this pretty much on every home. And this essentially means you're going to have a limited time to get in and see that home before offers start coming in. So we're going to have to know what our game plan is, and we're going to have some pretty clear decision-making. Once we're in the home, I'm going to want to get a debrief with you pretty quick after what you're thinking. So we're going to need to be in very close communication, so we actually have a fighting chance at the home if it's the home and you love it. And I use that offer review date kind of as a bridge for that, coupled with, you know, waiting and missing out over and over is going to eventually cost you a significant amount of money.
100%. Anything from you boys?
I mean, that simple question at the beginning, if we go out today and we find the perfect house, are you ready to make a move? And I think that's one of those, because a lot of times people come to you and say, oh, you know, we don't need to move until the summer, or we don't need to move until the fall. Well, if the right house comes on, are you ready? Are you ready to go make a move? Are you ready to offer today? And if the answer is yes, then they're motivated, and that's a place where you're going to go back to down the road when that perfect house comes on. And they're just letting them know that exactly what Jen said. You know, typically these things are going to go quick. And I usually like to tell them, like, hey, we're looking every morning for houses. You might get an email or a text from me like 5, 6 in the morning with a house. If that's a great house, a house you're interested in, we probably need to try to see it that day or whenever they allow us to see it. So just giving them this like, oh wow, we gotta go that quick. So just stating it as a fact, like this is, if it's a great house, it's gonna go within a day. The houses that you see on the market for 30 and 60 days are not those great houses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. Okay, so I want to bring something kind of around, because this is something that we talked about in our team meeting this week. And first, I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you guys this crazy activity report. Can you guys see my screen? See Sue? Okay, so this is 2023 in January. Okay, 881 conversations. You can see all the appointments, all the METs, all the signs, under contract and closed. So we closed actually more this year, but we did not put under contract more. But look at the amount of conversations. Look at the difference. 881 conversations in January 2023, 5,400 in January 2024. Insanity. So one of the things that we've really been pushing on our team is at the end of every single day, at the end of every day, in the beginning of the day even, who am I focused on this week? It's really, really easy for agents to get caught up in somebody or spending time on somebody who is not really willing, able, and immediately going to contract, right? You're dealing with triage, you're dealing with, dramas, you're dealing with whatever, but who are you focused on? Who is going to be making a move? Who is actively looking? Who do you need to really hone in on this week to get them under contract? And then at the end of every day, this is kind of going to be the difference maker, in my opinion, through this year, and especially through this spring, as inventory is low, more buyers are scarce, interest rates we've acclimated, but they're still mid. So ending every day, closing every single loop. That is going to help keep you on track. So number one, did I call everyone I needed to call? Did I email everyone I needed to email? Are my portals and my inboxes and my outcomes up to date? So we use Follow Up Boss. So for appointments, we have the outcomes that you have to choose, right? So are these all up to date? What do I have scheduled for tomorrow? What activities do I need to time block, don't mind my spelling error, to help me hit my goal tomorrow? And what do I need to do in order to perform those activities? So kind of back to the point of, it's all great and cool to say, oh, I'm going to make $150 a week. Oh, I consistently make, 500 calls a month. Well, is that getting you results? Or is that just you going through the motion and then you've mentally checking out when you've hit a number of dials, as opposed to waiting until you've actually accomplished the number of connections or the number of appointments that you need to make? So I think while we thought we were in separation season last year, I think this is actual separation season right now. There's a lot of people that are getting discouraged, and a lot of people that aren't willing to do whatever it takes. They want to do what it took 2 years ago to get these same results.
Definitely impressive on the amount of calls. I don't know how many agents are doing that, just out of curiosity, because that was very impressive.
There's 12 of us, agents and partners. Yep.
I will use this as motivation.
Well, I think it's also important to name these emotions in ourselves, right? To kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I think I've heard from every single agent in our one-on-ones over the last couple of weeks, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. I feel like I'm in this season where I'm doing all the right activities, I'm doing all the same things, but I'm just not getting the results. And so, this time of year, this season of the market, all have a lot to do with the output or the effort that we're putting out, and it will compound, right? But it's that messy middle that we're in right now that feels like it's going to be never ending. I'm going to be working this hard forever and nothing's ever going to come of it, and I'm never going to get any results. It's that feeling. And so making sure that we're looking at it objectively and being like, no, that's you're feeling that way because this is the data and what it's showing. And that's okay. This is a season. It will get fun again. It will get easy again. But this isn't the season to be riding that easy wave. Well, any other input around buyer consultation, value, bringing value to buyers, coaching, setting expectations?
I had a really good conversation with my partner I think it was on Tuesday about these conversations we're having. We're having so many of them. And to deliver the bad news sometimes, like you can't get everybody a house. Like it just, when we're burning as much energy as we are to try and find those qualified buyers, you cannot spend energy on people that are not qualified to buy. And you have to be that truth teller to them sometimes, and it's uncomfortable. So being able to not pour a bunch of energy in every conversation and have that discernment about whether or not this is a person you need to pour time and energy into or not is incredibly important in this season, because we are going to be exhausted and have no fruit if you can't discern that and cut it and tell them like it is and say, listen, now is not the time. It's not the season for you. Here's some goals you can have. You can potentially look for someone to co-sign in the future. And I'm 100% ready to speak with you and help you at that time. But it looks like you've got some saving to do or something along those lines, and then move on. Like no more like dropping a bit of hope and following up. No, don't do that.
Right.
And I think it's important to remember that in this season, because we only have so many hours in the day. And if we're making over like 5,500 dials in a month, or conversations, we have to make those conversations count or make it very short and move on to the next one.
Exactly. It's a great point, Jen. And both role plays that I led this week, actually, we are like specifically working on getting off the phone quickly if somebody is not qualified. I think that's the hardest thing, because we're agents. We want to be nice. We want everybody to win. We want everybody to be able to get a house. But like, it is an actual skill to build, to be able to be truthful with somebody, because clear is kind, as Brene Brown says, right? If clear is kind, then you are being more kind to that person, telling them the truth right up front, and getting out of that conversation than continuing to talk to somebody who you know isn't going to be able to buy a house this year for another 10 minutes. Like, that's a waste of everybody's time, theirs and yours. And like you said, it's not the time to be dropping little, crumbs of hope. Now is the time to be like, I totally understand. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Mr. Smith. In this particular market, with the way that, the appreciation that's happened in our market, you won't be able to buy a house with the current financial situation that you have. I would love to connect you with the lender so you can put together a plan to potentially build enough to, buy something in the next year or two. But in this market, the way that you're trending for what you're looking for, I don't think we're going to be able to find what you're looking for. And like that, to be able to say that to somebody, it sounds mean, right? A lot of our agents and partners are like, oh, I don't want to be mean to them. Like, you're actually being kind. You're actually giving them like the dose of truth that they need.
100%.
Because of, right? Like,
yeah,
I think that's a huge part of it right now. That's a great point. And we've literally role played specifically that this week.
Yep.
Where I'm like, I'm throwing you all these red flags. Why aren't we off the phone yet?
Yeah.
like
Yep.
Stop trying to qualify me. Like, I'm not qualified.
Yep.
So I think that it's like a reverse scripting almost, you know what I mean? Like a reverse conversion, but it's just as important, because you're saving your time and your sanity and your energy for people that you can pour into that can move right now.
Yeah, like that 5 times amount of calls and work and everything has to come from somewhere. We have to cut the fat somewhere to make that time available.
Yeah.
We don't just get 5 times as many hours to do that outreach, right? You have to make it much more efficient and dial it in so that you are not like a skeleton walking with exhaustion, like you have to have conservation somewhere and still be effective.
Exactly right. Yep. Well, anything else on this, guys? I think we've chatted through a lot of this.
No, I think it's good. I mean, getting people just back to the basic stuff is really important.
Yeah. Focusing on fundamentals.
I'd encourage everyone to approach their buyer business the same way you approach your listing business. Have a process, do consultations, don't just wing it. Showing homes to random strangers is not a strategy.
Stupid.
Waste of time.
Stupid. Well, no. Well, that's how that's how I started my business back 20 years ago. Somebody calls, you go to the house, and you just hope for the best. And I sold a bunch of houses. Like it worked out okay. But I don't think that it works right now the way it did then. It's just different. And we cover, I know we cover a really big area. So if I'm going and just meeting somebody at a house that's 50-50 going to show up. And a lot of people in my market do it. I mean, if you have a bunch of listings, you get to see it happen. Half of the showings on our listings get canceled before they happen because they're Redfinage, well, you know, different brokerages that are like, but they're purchasing the Zillow leads. They're taking the phone call. They're running to the property. It's just, and the half of the showings don't actually happen. So it's something I actually tell sellers up front. Just, you're going to have showings that happen this way because this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, that's actually a really good point to set expectations with sellers, that there's a lot of just like looky-loos and a lot of instant showings that happen with a lot of those. It's a really good point, for sure. Love it. All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap a couple minutes early. I think that this was good, productive, quick, but also a good reminder for all of us on a couple of areas that we can take away. Practice the reverse conversion. Get people off the phone if they're not freaking qualified. Not worth your time to continue a conversation with somebody who can't buy a freaking house. And really looking forward to seeing you guys next Thursday, 10 a.m. for our combined launch and build class for the rest of this month. So enjoy your week, guys. Take care. See you later.